Rand states that those who declare that man cannot be an object of worship are those that have never encountered any species of humanity who deserve it. Rand believed that reverence belongs not to the gods, but to the human spirit at its best. So I was in my mid-20s when I first read The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. And I remember feeling as though I had found my only true friend, someone who spoke the same language of values and vision that I believed in. A book that has now since attained status as a modern classic, and I think thousands of people have read it. And of course, I went on to buy her entire collection, fiction and non-fiction. And the books carried the same fierce philosophy of independence, integrity, and purpose, with those timeless, fundamental, universal values of human existence. In Aristotle's words, her philosophy has always been not as things are, but as they might be and as they ought to be. Interesting how my perspective has changed on that when I read it 25 years ago, and I read it very quickly over the last 3 days for this talk, but I'll get to that eventually. So in Ayn Rand's own words, whatever their future, at the dawn of their lives, man seek a noble vision of man's nature and of life's potential. My philosophy, objectivism, in essence, is the concept of man as a heroic being, with his own happiness as the only moral purpose of his life, with achievement as his noblest activity and reason as his only absolute. Needless to say, Rand uses the word man here to represent all humankind, and not only one gender, but all humans across all genders. Ayn Rand believed that the noblest emotions of man, reverence, exaltation, sacredness, belong not to a supernatural realm, but firmly in the realms of you and I, of us humans. Reverence and exaltation were not to be placed outside this earth and beyond man's reach. They belong to the human spirit at its highest potential. To Rand, the true object of reverence was man himself, not as a helpless or a fallen being, but as a creator capable of reason, of purpose, and of greatness. Exaltation usually taken to mean an emotional state in the contemplation of the supernatural, or reverence meant to be sacred respect, to be experienced on one's knees, or not to be touched by the concerns of man on this earth. To Ayn Rand, these concepts were the dimensions for the human being, the highest level of man. These are to be redeemed for her from mysticism and directed to its proper object, man. Rand believed that reverence belongs not to the gods, but to the human spirit at its best. Controversial? A little bit. In Ayn Rand's words, in this sense, with this meaning and this attention, that fountainhead is dramatized as man worship. Rand states that those who declare that man cannot be an object of worship are those that have never encountered any species of humanity who deserve it. Rand called them man-haters. Those who hate man, who regard man as helpless, deprived, a contemptible creature, and struggle never to let him discover otherwise. Rand sought to redeem this noblest of human emotions from mysticism and religion and return it to the rightful home, right here on earth. Rand believed the reverence belongs, I'm repeating, not to gods, but to the human spirit at its best. So to paraphrase Rand, it is not in the nature of man nor of any living entity to start out by giving up and damning existence. That requires a process of corruption which differs from man to man. Some give up at the first touch of pressure, some sell out, some run down by imperceptible degrees and lose their fire, never knowing when or how they lost it. And then all of these vanish in the vast swamp who tell them that maturity means abandoning one's mind or abandoning one's values. Yet a few hold on and move on knowing that their fire is not to be betrayed, learning how to give it shape, purpose, and reality. But whatever their future, at the dawn of their lives, men seek a noble vision of man's nature and life's potential. Perhaps the best way to communicate the fountainhead, the sense of life, is by the means of the quotation which was at the head of her manuscript, which she removed but then brought back. The noble soul has reverence for itself. Ayn Rand's novel The Fountainhead primarily serves as a fictional exposition of this core tenets of her philosophy, which is objectivism, focusing on the dramatic conflict between individualism and collectivism, not in politics, but as played out within a man's soul. The real power of engaging with Ayn Rand's The Fountainhead lies in approaching its philosophical abstraction rather than focusing solely on the eccentricities of its characters. If anyone who's read Ayn Rand knows that those characters can be extremely radical, whether they are Howard Roark or Dominique or Toohey or Keating. These are not realistic portraits of people you'd meet on the street. They function as allegories, magnified representations of core moral and psychological principles. Like I said, I read Ayn Rand when I was just out of college. And Howard Roark, for all of us, stood out, right, as the embodiment of hero. We all wanted to be him, to be able to take our vision and make it our mission, to be able to execute our vision. But then there are all these foils in the story. Dominique, who has these conflicts between her idealism and her nihilism. There's Toohey, there's Keating, there's Gail Wynand. All of them are people who Ayn Rand calls second-handers. Why does she call them second-handers? What is the difference between Howard Roark and the second-handers to Ayn Rand? Essentially was Roark could see people as they are, while the rest of them saw people as they ought to be. Though this, if you read The Fountainhead, you might think I'm contradicting it, but I'm not. The reason that Howard Roark could have that healthy sort of take on life where he could complete his vision is because he saw people as they are and not how they ought to be, and therefore became embittered souls who then lost their faith in humanity. It's a much more fulfilling exercise when you see people for who they are and not from the lens of who they should be. As an entrepreneur of Litwitz and as a founder, I can tell you that has also served me very well this past decade, of never trying to put people in categories of what they should be or what they ought to be. But if you just meet people where they are, you can maybe then work towards to a place where you want to be or ought to be or could be. But if you start from there, no chance you're going to come to that place. So that's one. And just to close with the debate, because Litwitz is all about debating, there was the first speaker, I think, who talked about how we're just too individualistic today and too independent for our own good. But for us to be interdependent, the independence is necessary to come first. It's only when we are fiercely independent that we can depend on each other more effectively. So let's not make it, so like I said, 25 years, when I first read it, it was all about individualism, independence at any cost. 25 years later, at 52, I know it's not about it being mutually exclusive. It's about holding on fiercely to your individualism, but being able to also work with others and their individualism and being interdependent. So it's an excellent read, whether it was 25 years ago. There's a reason it's an American classic. Read it again today, especially for the young ones. It reminds you of those fundamentals, universal philosophies of life, which we tend to forget. We think it's okay to go with the flow, to be like everyone else, to fit in, to say what you want to say. To say what everyone else is saying. But it's a revolutionary act to be yourself every moment that you're alive. And I wish that for each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thanks.